The unseen and the silenced. In the heart of Gaza, behind the towering concrete walls and endless barbed wire, live millions of souls, unheard, unseen, and forgotten. The land, once flourishing with olive trees, citrus groves, and bustling streets humming with laughter and trade, now trembles under the weight of smoke, rubble, and relentless grief. It is a place where memory is stained with sorrow and where the future is wrapped in uncertainty. Families tuck their children into bed with lullabies of hope, even as drones circle overhead, whispering threats of destruction through the night sky. Parents teach their children to smile through fear, to dream despite despair, and to cherish every sunrise as if it could be their last. They do not ask for pity, only for justice, dignity, and the basic right to live without fear. A child clutches a teddy bear found in the ruins of what was once her bedroom, a small fragment of comfort in a world turned upside down. A father buries his son wrapped in a flag, not knowing if tomorrow he too will meet the same fate. A mother stares blankly at the horizon, her hands trembling, waiting for a ceasefire, a miracle, a voice, anything that can bring peace. But silence echoes back like a cruel answer to her prayers. The tragedy of Palestine is not new. It did not begin with the latest airstrike or the most recent blockade. It has been decades of forced displacement, brutal occupation, and systematic dehumanization. Generations have been born and died under siege. To them, freedom is a myth passed down in stories, something their grandparents once knew or dreamt of during quieter nights. And yet, through all the suffering, there remains an unshakable spirit. Children learn under the threat of bombs. Artists paint murals on broken walls. Couples marry in bombed-out buildings. Life finds a way to breathe, even in a place built to suffocate it. But how did it come to this? Why are millions forced to survive without rights, security, or hope? And more importantly, why does the world, especially the so-called free world, remain so quiet? Gaza, one of the most densely populated regions in the world, is often described as an open-air prison. Over 2 million people, most of them refugees or descendants of refugees expelled from their ancestral homes, are confined to a strip of land just 25 miles long and 7 miles wide. They are blocked by land, sea, and air, denied the freedom of movement, trade, and expression. Access to clean water is a rare privilege. Electricity flickers for only a few hours each day. Medical supplies are scarce. Food is rationed. Economic opportunities are non-existent for the majority. The youth grow up with dreams far bigger than their surroundings, and with the heartbreaking knowledge that many of those dreams may never be realized. In such suffocating conditions, resistance becomes not just a choice, but an instinct. Yet, when the oppressed rise to demand dignity, the world sees only the reaction, not the root. The headlines scream clashes, conflict, or escalation, but rarely do they mention the words that truly define this reality: occupation, apartheid, ethnic cleansing. The language we use matters. It shapes perception. It dictates response. And it often serves to sanitize the crime while criminalizing the victim. Why is Palestinian pain so easily dismissed? Why does their suffering not spark the global outrage it so clearly deserves? Why do children in Gaza grow up knowing the sound of drones better than the sound of birds? Manufactured silence, global complicity. When a single building collapses in the West, the world grieves. Vigils are held. Flags fly at half-mast. News anchors deliver solemn monologues. But when entire neighborhoods in Gaza are flattened within hours, the world rationalizes. The bodies become numbers. The grief becomes statistics. It's not just silence, it's selective empathy. The kind that draws borders around who gets to be seen as human and who is dismissed as collateral. Mainstream media plays a calculated game, wielding language like a weapon. They use terms like self-defense for the powerful and terrorism for the powerless. A child killed in Gaza becomes a casualty, while a child killed elsewhere is a tragedy. A bombed hospital is unverified, a wounded civilian is a suspected militant. This isn't just about journalism, this is about perception, and perception shapes public opinion. Public opinion shapes foreign policy. And foreign policy kills. World leaders issue carefully rehearsed statements, calling for restraint on both sides, as if one side doesn't control every checkpoint, every airway, every entry and exit, and every aspect of Palestinian life. As if occupation is a debate, not a reality. As if colonialism in 2025 is just too complicated to condemn. When hospitals, schools, mosques, and refugee camps are bombed, the world blinks and then moves on. Gaza becomes a footnote in the evening news, a brief segment before the weather report. But these aren't just buildings. They're safe havens. They're places of worship. They're the last remaining symbols of dignity. And when they fall, a piece of humanity falls with them. Silence is not neutrality. It is endorsement. Every nation that sells weapons to the occupier, every government that vetoes UN resolutions for accountability, every institution that rewards the oppressor with normalization deals or military aid, they are not neutral observers. They are active participants in the slow-motion destruction of a people. Every influencer who avoids the topic to protect brand partnerships, every journalist who stays balanced while reporting one-sided brutality, every citizen who says it's complicated without making the effort to understand, all contribute to this quiet genocide. We live in an age where a single hashtag can topple governments, where 15-second TikToks can ignite movements. And yet, Palestine is algorithmically buried. Posts about Gaza are shadow banned. Pages are removed. Activists are silenced, not with bullets, but with content moderation tools. Not by governments, but by the platforms we trust to share our voices. This digital erasure isn't accidental. It's strategic. Because if enough people see the truth, the babies pulled from the rubble, the fathers weeping at makeshift graves, the old women walking barefoot through ruins, then silence will no longer be an option. But truth cannot be buried forever. It fights its way through cracks in the wall, it echoes through the cries of survivors, and it resonates in the hearts of people across the world who refuse to look away. The eyes of a grieving mother, the trembling hands of a paramedic, the prayers of a child whispering to the stars, these break through even the thickest barriers of indifference. And they call us not just to mourn, but to act. Generations under occupation, expanded. Imagine being born into a life where your first memory isn't of lullabies or bedtime stories, but of war. Your childhood isn't colored by cartoons, swings, and laughter, but by the gray palette of military checkpoints, wailing sirens, and the echo of funerals. In Palestine, children are robbed of innocence before they even understand what the word means. In Gaza, kids don't count their birthdays, they count the number of wars they've survived. By the age of 10, many have already endured 3, sometimes even 4 brutal military assaults. Each war doesn't just destroy homes, it shatters the psyche. The skyline of their minds becomes filled with trauma. The sound of drones overhead, the fear of nighttime airstrikes, the absence of electricity during their favorite show. Psychological wounds run deep. PTSD isn't rare, it's rampant. Anxiety, night terrors, depression, these are common childhood companions in Gaza and across the occupied territories. Yet mental health infrastructure is either overwhelmed, underfunded, or entirely non-existent. While the world debates geopolitics, Palestinian children are left trying to piece together their fractured sense of safety and identity. Teenagers dream not of prom nights or future careers, but of simply staying alive. In Gaza, schools are targeted, shelled, or turned into shelters overnight. In the West Bank, education is obstructed by endless checkpoints, curfews, and the looming threat of settler violence. A diploma feels like a cruel irony when the world won't even recognize your nation, when your flag is called provocative, and your right to exist is still up for debate. Young adults in the West Bank live under constant surveillance. Their every movement tracked. Their freedoms rationed like water. Random night raids, home demolitions, and detentions without charge are everyday realities. A wedding can be interrupted by a military incursion. A birthday party can end in an arrest. It's a psychological cage with no key. But even in this cage, the Palestinian spirit refuses to be tamed. What makes this resilience so powerful is the unbreakable love Palestinians hold for their land, their families, and their heritage. Weddings still happen, sometimes in the rubble of destroyed homes. Music still plays, even when speakers are broken and batteries are scarce. Dabke dancers still stomp in resistance, their rhythm echoing a history of struggle. Artists paint murals on bombed-out walls, each stroke a cry for visibility. Writers turn grief into poetry, carving their existence into a world that tries to forget them. This story is not about borders or political affiliations. It's about people. Real human beings who want what we all want: peace, dignity, a safe place to raise their children, and the right to live freely. Yet time and again, their lives are reduced to sound bites. Their suffering becomes just another line on a scrolling news ticker, forgotten within hours. The world debates solutions over coffee while Palestine continues to bleed. Generations are growing old in limbo. Some are born in exile and die under occupation, never knowing true freedom. But through it all, they teach their children to love, not just to survive. And that, in itself, is the ultimate act of resistance. Shattered homes, unbreakable hope, expanded. To lose a home is not just to lose four walls and a roof, it's to lose history, memory, and a part of the soul. It's where birthdays were celebrated, where stories were told under flickering candlelight, where children took their first steps. For many Palestinians, this profound loss happens not once, but over and over. Bulldozers don't just erase buildings, they try to erase identity. Entire neighborhoods can vanish in minutes. Airstrikes flatten apartment complexes while families sleep. Streets once filled with laughter become graveyards of rubble and silence. Family heirlooms, wedding dresses, photo albums, everything that makes a place home, buried under the wreckage. And yet, here's the astonishing truth: amidst the ruins, hope blooms. A young boy is seen pulling a Quran from the debris of a collapsed mosque, dust-covered but intact. A girl plants jasmine near the shattered remains of her house, her hands dirty but her smile unshaken. An elderly man stands guard over his ancient olive tree, a living relic of his lineage, refusing to let go of what was planted generations ago. These are not just stories. They are acts of defiance. In a world that watches destruction in silence, these small moments whisper resistance. They proclaim, "We are still here." Hope in Gaza and the West Bank isn't naive, it's revolutionary. It is the conscious refusal to let the spirit die. It is resistance against erasure. Even as buildings collapse, souls rise stronger. International organizations make pledges to rebuild. But how do you reconstruct a life when the psychological foundations have been shattered? How do you rebuild trust when the world sees your pain and remains silent? We cannot rely solely on governments. They move slowly, speak cautiously, and too often value diplomacy over justice. But people, ordinary people, can move mountains. It is people who marched for apartheid to end in South Africa. It is people who rose for civil rights in the United States. Justice doesn't wait for permission. It demands collective outrage. Palestine doesn't need more pity. It needs solidarity. Active, loud, relentless solidarity. Every time we ignore the cries from Gaza, every time we scroll past a bombed-out school or a grieving mother, we let silence do the killing. But every time we speak up, we reclaim humanity. Now is not the time for neutrality. Neutrality in the face of oppression always sides with the oppressor. Palestine needs voices, now more than ever. Not when it's trending. Not when it's politically convenient. But now, in the heart of darkness, when hope is holding on by a thread. Because even if homes fall, hope must not. And in the end, it is hope, fierce, unapologetic, unyielding, that will lead the way toward justice. Our duty, our voice, our time. This is not just about Palestine. This is a test of our humanity, a mirror held up to the global conscience. If we stay silent while children die beneath collapsed buildings, if we scroll past genocide like it's background noise, if we ignore the desperate cries of a people who have been stripped of everything but hope, then what kind of world are we building? A world where compassion is conditional, where justice is selective, where some lives matter less than others. It is time to unlearn the lies we've been taught. Lies that disguise occupation as conflict. Lies that present oppression as defense. Lies that paint resistance as terrorism and erasure as peacekeeping. It's time to challenge every narrative that dehumanizes the oppressed. To call things by their real names. Apartheid. Ethnic cleansing. Colonialism. And it's time, now more than ever, to stand on the side of justice. Not just in empty words, but in relentless action. Educate yourself. Read the history beyond headlines. Understand the roots of the struggle, not just the flare-ups. Trace the timeline back to dispossession, displacement, and denial. Share the stories that the world tries to bury. The stories of families who rebuild their homes with their bare hands. Of doctors who operate in candlelight. Of children who learn under the constant hum of drones. Of artists, poets, and freedom fighters who remind the world. We are still here. Speak up in your communities. In your classrooms. At your dinner tables. In your places of worship. Use your platforms, big or small, to break the silence. Challenge your governments. Write. March. Vote. Boycott. Divest. Sanction. Demand accountability. Demand humanity. Demand truth. And most importantly, listen to Palestinians. Not through filtered news cycles, but directly. Center their voices. Honor their grief. Amplify their pain. Celebrate their strength. Because every time we speak, a wall of silence cracks. Every time we share, a lie is exposed. Every time we stand up, we bring Palestine one step closer to freedom. This is not a call to pity, it is a call to power. The power of people who refuse to be complicit. The power of collective truth. The power of radical empathy. The power of love, even in the face of hate. The power to rewrite the future, together. The world may have turned its back. Governments may remain neutral. Corporations may stay silent. But we won't. Not today. Not ever. Free Palestine. Always.